Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the S-tier build for the Monk class. This is not the starter set for Season 23 of Diablo. This is known as the Monkey's Garb, or the Monkey's King Garb outfit in particular. So this is basically a Tempest Rush build. There it is, the Monkey's King Garb. I'm going to bring up the skills for you here. The 2-piece bonus, your damage taken is reduced by 50% while Sweeping Wind is active. 4-piece, every second Sweeping Wind spawns a decoy next to the last enemy you hit that lands nearby enemies and then explodes for 1000% weapon damage for each stack of Sweeping Wind that you have. The 6-piece bonus, which we are not really going to be abusing too much outside of Tempest Rush, says Lashing Tail Kick, Tempest Rush, and Wave of Life have their damage increased by 15% for each stack of Sweeping Wind you have. So as you can tell, this is a Sweeping Wind / Tempest Rush build. Now, what else are we going to be using in the set? We're going to be using Suwuku's Soul. We're also going to be using the shoulder piece. On the gloves, we're still using the same thing, but we are going to add Captain Crimson because Captain Crimson basically goes with everything. So for those of you who are not familiar, 2-piece set says 6,000 life per second, reduces cooldown of all skills by 20%, and as well as the resource quest by 20% as well. Damage dealt is increased by your percentage of cooldown reduction. So more cooldown you have, the more damage you do. Convention of Elements and Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac are what we're going to be using for the ring. Cesar's Memento is what we're going to be using for the braces. Obviously, this has a necklace. We're going to be using it as well here. For the weapons, we want Vengeful Wind because it increases the maximum stack count of Sweeping Wind by 10. Increases the damage by 733%, which is quite significant here. We're also going to be using Wan Kim Lao, which says hitting with Tempest Rush with actives, Cyclone Strike, and both skills deal a medium amount of damage there. So, skills we're going to be using: Tempest Rush, Flurry. This is where the majority of our damage is coming from. Epiphany, Desert Shroud to make ourselves a little bit more tanky. Sweeping Wind, Inner Storm. Blinding Flash, Faith in the Light. Mantra of Salvation, Agility. Just here to get a little bit more dodge. We're not going to be using it too much, though. Keep that in mind. Crippling Wave for our resource generator. Passives, Beacon of Yar, Harmony, Restless Assault. Seize the Initiative. Inner Kanaiski, very important that you run this exact build here. Balance, Mantle of Channeling, and Ring of Royal Grandeur. That way you can get all your set bonus pieces. Now, I am not doing this in the season because I just don't care for pets too much. So I'm just going to dump all my Paragon here. I'm over Paragon 1271, I believe. So keep that in mind. This is going to be a showcase. Definitely in your comments, let me know what you think of the armor. If you have particular things that you use differently, keep in mind this is a build. This is not like you must run this. This is just some suggestions as to the way I particularly play the armor at the moment. Keep in mind that all armors that you see on this channel are indeed a work in progress. They are not fully optimized. I use my fully optimized sets for when I'm not making video content. That way I can kind of give you an idea of what you're going to do. So, when you get into the Greater Rift, the first thing that you are going to want to do is cast your not Tempest Rush, but your Sweeping Wind, and then you will channel Tempest Rush. But here is the very common mistake that a lot of people make with the Monkey's King's Garb. They have a tendency to constantly hold in Tempest Rush. If you do that, you will burn through all your spirit very fast to the point that you will not have any spirit to maintain not only your Tempest Rush ability, or as well as you will not be able to keep your Sweeping Wind stacks as active as they should be. So what you want to do is you want to just, as you see monsters, lightly tap Tempest Rush. You don't want to constantly hold it in because you burn through, in particular with this set armor, your spirit very, very fast. The way we get back our spirit in this particular armor, the best way while we're trying to mitigate through enemies, is we activate our Epiphany. Because we are using Goak of Swiftness, we get a large amount of cooldown on this particular armor, as for every enemy we hit, we gain a stack and up to a maximum 10 stack. So basically, every time you're hitting with that Tempest Rush Sweeping Wind combo, you're getting a stack of Goak of Swiftness. So most of the time, you will have Epiphany at your disposal to constantly rebuild up that spirit. That's basically how this particular set build for this armor operates. If you get into a really bad spot where you see that you do not have a lot of spirit being built up from Epiphany, what you can do is that's when you want to use Crippling Wave, as you saw there, to build back up that spirit meter extremely fast, and then just go straight back into the cast a Sweeping Wind, and then start channeling Tempest Rush near enemies. Keep in mind, based on where the armor's set up, when you use your Tempest Rush, you're going to pull enemies towards you. Hopefully the decoys will go off. Keep in mind, there is a kind of glitch problem with the decoys that Blizzard has never really technically fixed the way they probably had promised us they were going to fix it. So when you use your Tempest Rush, sometimes you have to kind of attack in a diagonal pattern for that decoy to actually go off. Sometimes it goes off on its own, sometimes it doesn't. It's really a weird thing. Usually my recommendation is try to attack in diagonal-like patterns when possible, particularly on the higher greater risk where that Tempest Rush is probably not going to be one-shotting thing. So always with this strategy for this armor is simple. Cast a Sweeping Wind. When you see an enemy, use Tempest Rush. If you see elite packs that are very bulky, that is when you're going to want a Binding Flash and then go Tempest Rush just to get more damage out of them. You will also want to constantly keep your Epiphany active because it will be one of the best ways to get back your resource generator. Every once in a while, if you think you can get a Mantra of Salvation off, definitely look into doing so because that just makes life so much easier. Obviously, abuse windows of pylons, so if you get the pylon in particular, that lets you go a lot faster. You can do your run a lot more quick and more efficiently for here. Now, in terms of optimization, now this is my recommendation. You do not have to follow this. It's just the way I prefer to play the armor, so keep that in mind. My recommendation would be on your helm, get crit hit chance 6.0%. This one's a little bulky, so maybe we should hit it with Blinding Flash. I also have to reactivate my Sweeping Wind there, so I'm going to let it follow me for a bit and channel my decoys. Here we go. Took it out there. You have to be careful because sometimes, as I said before, you're burning through a lot of spirit, and depending on the amount of monsters on screen, sometimes you will run into a situation where you have to use Crippling Wave to get back things very, very fast to then kind of repeat here. This is a very squishy class, the Monk, so keep that in mind when you are playing through your Greater Rift, and in particular maybe if you decide that you're going to go this way for your Seasonal Journey. The Seasonal Journey armor for the Monk is the Raiment of 1,000 Storms armor, which I covered at the very end of Season 22. It's available on the playlist. All that information can be applied for Season 23. Nothing has changed in that regard, but it is a very underperforming armor that definitely needs buff, so I would recommend probably following this particular armor for your Seasonal Journey or the Patterns of Justice, which we did in Season 22 at Diablo. It's available in the playlist. I will be covering that sometime in Season 23, revisiting. I always revisit every armor after I've done slight tweaks here and there. Now, in terms of optimization, getting back to what I was talking about before, on your helm, 6.0 crit hit chance I would recommend. On your gloves, I would recommend these free stats. I would recommend attack speed at least 6.0. 8.0% is probably the most optimal. Crit hit chance, I want that usually at 6.0 to 8.0. Depends if you have an Ancient Legendary and a good roll of that. For also the gloves, I would recommend crit hit damage 50%. If you get 49%, it's okay, obviously, because it's very hard to roll things, but 50% would be the optimal amount of roll that you get on that particular thing. Then, in regards to everything else, you obviously want to power up your Tempest Rush. So where you can get Tempest Rush at 15% damage, definitely invest in that 15% damage to get more damage out of your Tempest Rush. That's the main source of damage, so obviously you want to buff that. Anywhere where you can't get that, but you do see Sweeping Wind have a potential buff, definitely try to buff the Sweeping Wind as well, because these are the two skills that you are relying on as a crutch to basically do maximum amount of damage. That's what this armor in particular uses. Obviously, the most important thing to do in this armor build as well is to get cooldown reduction everywhere you potentially can at the maximum rolls. We're using Captain Crimson, so the more cooldown that we add to our armor, the more damage that we are going to be putting out. The more damage means the higher you will be able to clear your Greater Rifts, which if you're trying to get high leaderboard placement for the season, is something that you are definitely going to want to do, is get more damage out of this armor. When you get good cooldown reduction on this, and you get basically perfect rolls, and you've augmented your armor all the way up, this armor can potentially, it also depends on skill level, do Greater Rifts of about 130 to 135 solo with ease if you're in a group of 4. and everybody is very fully optimized, you will be able to clear a Greater Rift 150 with a very good group as well using this particular build. Again, it's a matter of skill level of people you're playing with. It also is a matter of, do you have all your gems augmented, which is very important. Some people actually are not very familiar with. I saw it in the comments, and there's that some people are not familiar with the fact that you have to augment gems to get more damage out of it. Yes, so I think it's very important. I'll touch on this right now. If you're not familiar with this, in order to do more damage at higher Greater Rifts, you will need to use a feature in the Kanai's Cube called Augment Armor. So basically what you do is you, as you see here, the legendary gems that you put into your necklace and your 2 rings have a level up system, which is obviously tied directly to the Greater Rift system. What you usually do is you level up your gems and you try to get them to about level 90 or 100, because that's when the skill ceiling and these effects max out and they don't go any higher. So usually what most people like to do is they level their gems primarily between level 80 to a level 100, depending on how well their armor is performing. And then they go in the Kanai's Cube and they augment the armor with a legendary gem. Ideally what you want to do is level up gems after you've gotten the ones that you're running in armor. You level up other gems that you are not intending to use to level 80, preferably. Level 100 is usually the way to go, but obviously as you're trying to push higher Greater Rift, sometimes you have to augment at a lower level. So but basically you would want to level or augment the gems at level 100 into an armor piece. You can only augment gems into an armor that is ancient, legendary, or higher rarity. So that's ancient legendary and primal ancient legendary. Now if you're very new to Diablo and you're probably wondering what exactly that means, whenever you see an armor piece that has a gold border around it, that means it is a ancient legendary. That means you can augment that thing with a legendary gem. If you see a border that's red instead of gold, that is a primal ancient legendary, which gives you perfect stats, perfect rolls. Now, for Seasonal Journey of Diablo 3, you cannot have primal ancient legendaries drop unless you clear a Greater Rift 70. You have to clear Greater Rift 70 for them to drop in seasonal challenges. Now, for non-seasonal characters, such as the one that I'm playing at the moment, that was a 3-minute and 27-second clear time on Greater Rift 65, which is Torment 14 difficulty, by the way. We are going to also do a 70 and 75, just to show you how well this does as you go higher up in the Greater Rift. But getting back to the point, for Primal Ancient Legendaries, if you're a non-seasonal character, all you have to do is have one of your characters clear a Greater Rift of 70, and then every non-seasonal character will also have access to the ability of Primal Ancient Legendaries dropping during, obviously, their play sessions of Diablo 3. So that's how you do it. Now, but ideally you want usually to have the most optimum stats on armor, Ancient Legendary pieces, or a full set of Primal Ancient Legendaries, which is extremely hard to do, guys. Just based on the rolls and everything, and just trying to get a full set armor, Ancient Legendary, it could take you anywhere between maybe a year if you're playing nonstop, maybe 4 years. You know, it's all dependent on things. There's not really a set way to get Primal Ancient Legendaries, especially the ones you desire. Most of the time when you're playing through Diablo 3, half the time you're going to run into Primal Ancient Legendaries are basically useless, or you don't use them in the build, and, you know, it pains you to have to keep some of these, but that's kind of what you got to do usually. So, you know, my recommendation, get Ancient Legendary pieces. Don't try to go for Primal Ancient Legendaries, and if you happen to run into pieces for it, obviously use those over the Ancient Legendaries because it's a better roll for you. So keep that in mind. Not something that too many people tend to cover in the Diablo community, but that's basically how you want to operate. Now, if you are deciding that you're going to use the Monkey King's Garb for Seasonal Journey, my advice to you would be, from the very start working on bounties. The reason for that is Captain Crimson drops via plans from the goblins, which usually you will encounter a higher chance of them while doing bounties for a season, because obviously there's a chance to. Also, keep in mind that in order to actually craft Captain Crimson, even when you actually get the plans, you need bounty rewards that you get from Tyrion's Cachet, which only drops after you complete a whole chapter's bounty, so on and so forth. You need, I believe here would be for Captain Crimson, the Chapter 3 bounty cachet, and you also need a Chapter 5 one, and I believe as well a Chapter 4. Usually it's the later chapters that you need for Captain Crimson because that drops obviously later on in particular play session. So definitely, I would focus on doing a lot of bounties. On top of that, the benefit of doing a lot of bounties is you're going to have a lot of death breaths, which you need for rolls, especially when you're beginning the season. Also, it helps because you're just going to be leveling up anyway before you hit level 70, but then you can do Paragon Farm. So I would recommend definitely doing bounties, a lot of them in the beginning. So you could get death breaths, you could get blood shards, you could get the plants for Captain Crimson, and then you can craft Captain Crimson. And then from there, what you would do is then you jump into Greater Rifts, clear your Greater Rift 70, and then particularly from there, I would recommend augmenting your legendary gems. Probably you will have to do it with this particular armor. I would say probably you're going to see around Greater Rift 50 or 60. This is when the armor starts to struggle a little bit. So you could, if you wanted to, augment 1 or 2 pieces at like legendary gem 50 or 60. That'll push you at least to 70, and then from there, keep in mind you can always overwrite a augmentation. So let's say you augment armor with a level 50 gem, and let's say you get a level 100 gem, then you could go back and re-augment it. It overwrites whatever currently was in that particular slot. Again, the only problem is obviously you're wasting legendary gems, but you know, Diablo 3, you're going to be grinding a lot in particular for getting what you want out of things. So keep in mind, usually with Diablo 3, it's not necessarily the destination, it's about the journey. People get enjoyment playing just constantly through and trying to improve and get their gear better and maximize. So don't really focus so much on the end game as opposed to the journey, because then you're just going to get burnt out on Diablo 3, which is what happens to a lot of people that play Diablo 3, is they're just so focused on trying to get to end game that they don't really enjoy just, you know, the therapeutic, so to speak, experience of just grinding through random Greater Rifts. So that was a Greater Rift 70 3-minute clear time, which is very, very good for a not fully optimized armor. We are going to do a Greater Rift 75. This will show you how this armor performs on Torment 16 difficulty, which is the highest difficulty level. Obviously, as you go higher up in the Greater Rifts, going Greater Rift 80 and beyond, the enemies get more tanky, which means our strategy has to be changed up just slightly with Tempest Rush Monk. Same strategy as before, but we add a couple of steps here. First thing, obviously, when you get into a Greater Rift this high, cast your Sweeping Wind. Make sure you get those 10 stacks of Sweeping Wind as fast as possible. Then, obviously, you're going to use your Tempest Rush. When you run into mobs that are particularly elite packs that look like it's going to take you a long time to take them down, you are going to have to rely on using your Blinding Flash, because we have legendary gems in here that is Bane of the Stricken, Bane of the Trap, and Gorok of Swiftness. Anytime you hit a monster with a status effect, and keep in mind when you augment the gem past level 25 of Bane of the Trap, it automatically will cast slow anyway, you will deal a increased amount of damage. So that's where Blinding Flash comes in very handy, because you can chuck out a whole bunch of big chunk meaty damage on elite packs. So you usually want to save it for that. Another thing that you're going to have to also do is definitely conserve your epiphanies. I actually casted a Blinding Flash there. You guys didn't get to see it because that's how fast it was imploding them off. But definitely you have to be a bit more cautious with these Tempest Rush and keeping your Epiphany active and casting it when you need to maintain that spirit, because as you get higher up, monsters take a little bit more damage and they can take hits, and you will probably find yourself very low on that spirit regeneration. Also, what you could do to get it back is if you're fighting very small enemies, you can just go fire off a couple of crippling waves. About 3 or 4 hits when you have Epiphany active will pretty much bring that meter back up to half. So that's definitely something you can do. Non-Epiphany, if you swing with that, it's going to bring up your resource generator by maybe about 30%, which should be enough to carry you through the Greater Rift. But keep in mind that usually crippling wave when you are in Epiphany. That way you can get back a lot of spirit as opposed to a little bit. And obviously, don't hold in Tempest Rush. Common mistake a lot of people make. You don't need to hold it in. You just use it when you see enemy close enough. And then when you don't see an enemy, you just leave it alone and cast your Epiphany and get back your resource generator. Also keep in mind, you have to maintain your Sweeping Wind stacks. So obviously keep an eye on where your Sweeping Wind is designated in your hub. It's going to be a little bit different for PC players. For anybody that's acting, I am playing on the Nintendo Switch platform. All information is applied here. You can apply to the PC version. There's no difference outside of the fact that somebody's using a controller and another person is using mouse and keyboard and has a little bit more precision, and their user interface on the PC version is slightly different, but all the information applies that I've been giving you. This works for any particular platform whatsoever. That's the great thing about Diablo 3 in that retrospect. So, same strategy here. We're going to try to Blinding Flash off, and then you just cancel a Tempest Rush. Usually, it will just kind of one-shot things even on greater of 70. Only difference here is... Ooh, I took an unnecessary death there. Keep in mind, this is a very squishy particular class, so you can run into a bad position. I basically going to hang back here a little bit so I could build up sweeping wind stacks, and then you just kind of go through here. Hit that with a Blinding Flash. Obviously, you see I'm using Crippling Wave to get back some resource generator because I'm running a little bit low. That has to do with the fact that, obviously, I took an unnecessary death. This hasn't been asked on social media for people who are following me on social media, particularly Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, that's Kevin for the win. That's Kevin, the number 4, and then the win. Or you could just follow Dreadscape's social media accounts, which you see usually at the end graphics whenever I do these videos. Something that was asked was about Diablo 2, if I was going to be covering Diablo 2 on the channel. Diablo 2 Resurrected it. Yes, when Diablo 2 has its alpha for consoles, I will definitely take a look at that when it has its official release, which I don't have an official date, but to my knowledge, based on what I've heard from people that work closely with Blizzard and or resources, we're probably going to be seeing Diablo 2 Resurrected on platforms sometime in fall. Keep in mind, when Diablo 3 was released on Nintendo Switch, it was a November release date, so I'm thinking chances are, since it is coming in 2021, we are going to get a full... I hate this Rift Guardian, by the way, guys, so I got to move away from here a little bit, cast Sweeping Wind. I'm going to hit Blinding Flash, and then you go Tempest Rush, and that's kind of how you take care of that annoying one. But yeah, for Diablo 2 Resurrected, I'd say we're probably going to get a November release date. So when it comes out, which would probably be early November, or definitely be covering on the channel, obviously it's going to take me a while to get some meta builds going and just get a feel for the characters. I might do regular story playthrough if I have enough time. Keep in mind, obviously, cover more things on the channel besides Diablo 3 and obviously eventually Diablo 2 content. We also do Monster Hunter Rise here. This is a variety channel, so keep in mind I cover more things than just Diablo, but definitely Diablo 2 is something that we have planning to cover on the channel. Definitely something we've looked into, and when the alpha is available, we will do that. Okay, so this was Greater Rift 75, which was Torment 16. 4 minute 51 second. Probably if I didn't take the unnecessary death, we'd have a closer 4-minute clear time. This is not fully optimized. With optimization, you probably would be able to get this clear time down to about maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It really depends on how you optimize things and the rolls that you get and everything of the sort. But this basically, if you follow the instructions I gave you here, will carry you pretty high. Let's see if I get any decent loot here. I had basically the item to summon the cow level, which is that Baton Pavinci, whatever you call it, already previously to this run. Let's see here. I am planning to cover the followers and give a guide to how you should optimize the followers. The only problem with that is I just haven't had any time to farm pieces for all the followers for all the different classes that I do. I do plan to make a video on the follower. It will be coming, hopefully, sometime early into the season. We are about a month, roughly, in the season so far, so I'm hoping to get it out in May, in time for our 1-year anniversary. We are hitting a year on the channel, believe it or not, on May 4th. That's officially the 1-year anniversary. Obviously, like always, thank you to everybody that's been watching, commenting, subscribing, giving your feedback, whether positive or negative, constructive criticism. All that stuff is welcome. In those interactions, I like to give people a voice at least and open up dialogue because I think that's very important in regards to YouTube gaming. I don't really necessarily feel like there's a wrong answer, and particularly when it comes to armor builds, there's many different ways to run it, not just the way I showed it, so keep that in mind. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for the Monkey King's Garb. I will see you next time. Make sure you give this video a like and subscribe, and I will see you Thursday for the next Diablo 3 video.